Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Claire Varesio. I am the community librarian at Cupertino Library. I'm pleased to have you all here for today's wellness program, Mindfulness, Meditation, Theory, and Practice. Our wellness programs focus on the other half of health, topics that you might not be discussing with your doctor, but that are very important for your overall health and wellness. And we're pleased to be able to bring you this series in partnership with Cupertino Library Foundation. And I would like to introduce from the foundation, Henry Sang, the board president, who will be giving a few words about the foundation and introducing today's speaker. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claire. I'm happy to see all of you here today because I know sometimes it's drizzling out there and you never know, where you're going to get caught in the rain. Plus, it's hard to find parking here, right? So look, we are very happy, the Library Foundation, to be able to sponsor these types of events. And because we see what's happening in our community and we're finding out that our community is changing. The role of the library is changing, right? It used to be the place where you got books, right? And it was great when they had VHS tapes. And now you've got ebooks. In fact, I think I read more ebooks now than I do real books. But what CLF does is we serve two purposes, really. We are advocates for you, our community members. What new things do we need to learn about? Do we want to hear about? And how do we bring that to the library? How do we experiment with it? So just like Claire said, last year, we were just doing lectures, and this year we're saying, well, what happens if we do a little follow-up behind it? So that's why Sunil's going to come back in June. It's going to give 2 more of these. So can we do a little bit more? And, we're trying to experiment with that. So please, if you have ideas on the survey, write down some ideas for us. We're happy to entertain that. Now, I said we do 2 things. So that's us being an advocate for you and for ourselves and our families to do new things, right? That's how we evolve. We also are an advocate for the library itself because it turns out as a government agency, did everybody realize a library is actually part of government? Most people don't like government, but we all love our library, right? But there are things that they can't do and they can't advocate for themselves. And this is where we step up. In fact, that's how we got started 25 years ago, because for those of you who were here in the 90s, you remember there was one point when all of a sudden the hours that the library was open got cut to a bare minimum. Yeah, I see some people shaking their head. Yeah, it was terrible. And so we started to advocate, to get money, to raise money, and then get our doors open. And our library is one of the most darling libraries in the United States. It's one of the most well-attended libraries ever, right? Do you know Claire and her staff did 656 programs last year? Whoa. Almost 900,000 people went through the door, right? Now, the thing is we need more space because I don't know how many times I've been there, I couldn't find a seat. And also the more programs that we want to do, we need actual room for it. The largest room over there is like 40 people can go in. And I tell you, if you came for the Alzheimer's talk, it was pretty crowded. So we are advocating with our city to expand the library. This room isn't as available as much as we really need it to be available. They have to do city events here, and so we're looking to do an expansion on it. And the good news is our city has said, yes, we want to do that. They've given us money on it, but guess what? The costs just keep going up and up and up. So one of the things I'm here to do today is to ask you, not to write a check, I want you to help us do this right. Because you know how governments tend to do things that, you could probably get better, but you probably couldn't pay more for it. You know what I mean? So one of the things we are doing is we're putting together a group of things in the Library Foundation, and one of them is a group of experts. We are looking for people who are architects and builders and tradesmen and contracts people, and we want to actually make sure that what gets designed is going to meet our goals and what we need going forward, that it's done at a reasonable price. Right? This is your money and my money. We want it done at a reasonable price. And 3 is that the operational costs and everything are low. We want to do a good job, right? And I'm asking you, if you have these skills, come and see us and volunteer for it. If you don't have the skills, who do you know, right? Is it your neighbor? Is it a friend or something like that? We need help. So if you would help us do this, we're going to get a better place for our library. And quite frankly, I think this is a really good thing to do for all of us to do it. If you want, there's a handout on the back, and you see our logo at the top. You can take one of those, and it talks about the things. But just don't be shy, and bug your neighbor, bug your friends, because we need the help. Now, that's me talking about what we're going to do. By the way, if you do want to give us money, we'll take it. But anyway, I want to turn this over to Sunil because this is a very exciting opportunity. We live in a very high stress environment. How do you cope? Are you coping with it because of your job? Are you coping? How's your kids coping with it? You know, we've got a lot of stress in our life, and we have to figure out, you know, are we just carrying it the wrong way? And I went to one of the talks that Sunil gave, and I was so impressed that we said, you know, we got to get this guy in here. So with that, Sunil, please come on up.
Thank you, Henry. Okay, so first of all, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share some of my experience with you all. Today's topic is mindfulness, meditation theory and practice. First of all, my first introduction to meditation was when I was 8 years old. I was born in Sri Lanka, and we were in a rural part of Sri Lanka, and my father was visiting a forest monastery and I tagged along with him. And I was listening to their conversation, and the monk was telling my father that when you are in deep meditation, you don't feel any pain, you can sit for hours. It intrigued me, and I was really curious. But I was never able to validate it until much later. My first practice of mindfulness or meditation was transcendental meditation. Some of you probably remember when I was in England in the university. I was made popular by Beatles, if you remember. And since then, I've used meditation in my work that helped me really propel in my career under very extreme circumstances. I'll be happy to share with you during the question time. But so mindfulness itself, a lot of you think mindfulness is just sitting for 15 minutes a day, calming yourself down, and getting back with work and getting stressed again, and then sitting down. Mindfulness is a lot more than that. Mindfulness is learning not to get stressed. That's the key. Of course, mindfulness helps get rid of your stress, which is the starting point. You should all meditate to do that. You will realize how bad stress is. But what I'm going to talk about is a little bit of background and theory, how we achieve that. So hopefully it'll be useful and encourage you to practice. So mindfulness meditation has been around for a long time, actually over more than 2,500 years, so it's not a new phenomenon. First of all, I'd like to thank all the teachers who passed down that knowledge, which we are able to benefit today. And even though it's a new phenomenon in the West, it has been growing in US. In 2011, there were 4.1% of the population who practiced. By 2017, it was 14.2%. So it's been growing significantly. The reason are many. One, of course, is stress we all experience is been growing, the challenges at work, and mostly with the new devices, multimedia, social media, and so on. And secondly, business. And business found mindfulness meditation is really helping the bottom line. It increased productivity, creativity, and employee relations. And secondly, in healthcare, and now mindfulness-based cognitive therapy is covered by medical insurance. Some of you probably using that. And lastly, in schools. The suicide rates or attempted suicide rates has been going up significantly. And a lot of the schools use that. Mindfulnessschools.org is a good website if you want to know more about it. So with that, I would like to have more interactive session to gauge the audience as well. I'd like to know, please raise your hand if you are new to mindfulness, if you've never practiced. Okay, what, 20 of you or so? People who practice regularly, which means at least 3 times a week, you do meditate. Please raise your hand. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about 8 or 10. Thank you. So, with that, my presentation includes some of the deeper concepts. So if you find it difficult, you feel free to ask questions at the end. I'll be happy to clarify. So I'll cover why you are here. I'll ask you, and it's a common goal for everybody. Understand mindfulness. We need to understand our mind and body. I explain what that is, and then go into some fundamentals of meditation, and then consequences of stress. This is very important because that's why we are here. We got to know what it means, and then we'll go through some meditation. If you have time, we can do a little bit of meditation together. So, why are you here? It is related to your goals in life. Do you know what your goal in life is? Just a tip. It's common for everyone. Every one of you, including myself. Any guesses? It's to be happy. Everything we do, implicitly, explicitly, is for happiness. Sometimes we endure hardship, but again, the ultimate goal is happiness. And the key word is pursuit of happiness. And if you are pursuing happiness, we should know what it is. What is the definition of happiness? How do we get happy? Or how do we feel happy? This is important to know. This is our life goal. So if you don't know it, how can we be happy? But there are pitfalls in that as well. The key word is pursuit of happiness. And as it's in the Constitution, pursuit of happiness is our right. And key word is pursuit because you are pursuing something, which means is always a goal ahead. So happiness is always ahead if you do not know how to go for happiness. So what is happiness? Let's define it. So being happy, meaning getting what you desire, whatever your desire is. It could be for things, relationships, jobs, whatever. So when you get it, you are happy. And also, if you get what you don't like, if you don't get what you don't like, is also making you happy, keeping away from things that you do not like. And the opposite is true for unhappiness. So unhappiness is not getting what you desire and getting what you do not desire. So it's a very simple definition, and I think you can all relate to that. When you are happy, you can think, what did I get? So happiness is a state of mind. So let's look at happiness we are happy with, but unhappiness something we want to avoid. So unhappiness, this is a piece of research by, we can say it here, by the psychologists Matthew Killingsworth and Daniel Gilbert. They did this survey. They're still actually doing that a few years ago, with a mobile app with more than 250,000 people across the world from different backgrounds, different incomes. And they found that 47% of the time, our mind is wandering. In other words, we are not attending to what we are supposed to be doing. That's a big chunk of time. So if you imagine you sleep 8 hours a day, which means Your mind is wandering for 7.5, 1/3 of your life. Your mind is wandering. And if you are 60 years old, you have been spending 20 years not being productive. Can you imagine? Can you experience that? We'll have some tests later. But more important finding was that our unhappiness is due to the wandering mind. It's not the other way around. Our mind wanders because we are unhappy. That's not the case. Because the mind wanders, we become unhappy. That's one of the important findings of this research. And if in order to understand more about mindfulness, we should understand our mind and body. So let's talk about our body. What is our body made of? You remember your birth weight and how heavy you are. So how did we grow from the time of inception? We are what we eat, what we put in it. So everything that you have consumed from the inception and whatever we inherited at inception until now, whatever you have put into your body, eating, drinking, breathing through your skin as well, that is what your body is made of. Nothing more, nothing less. So in mindfulness, mindful eating is a very important part of it, because eating is when you really take it. You know, whether you buy them, you might buy a lot of ice creams, but as long as you don't eat it, that's fine. So whatever you ate yesterday, day before, that is who you are. And we identify this body as me. People tag the name, we tag other people with names, we identify other people with names. So name is tagged to our body. And it is just made of the food we eat. And just a tip, so when you are eating, when we do classes, we talk about this, but just to give you some heads up, when you are eating, you should be mindful of what you are actually chewing. So if you are eating with a knife and fork, you put it down instead of cutting the steak for the next mouthful. You should be focusing on the sensations and the taste that you are experiencing. If you are cutting the next piece, preparing the next mouthful, which means you are not focusing on what you are eating, this means happiness is ahead. That's why you can never be happy, because you are thinking of what's next instead of enjoying what you are doing. You are thinking of the dessert probably after that. So, understanding the mind. Similar to the body, mind is accumulation of all your impressions from the time of inception, including whatever you have inherited at the point until now. It's all your experiences. You cannot think outside that. You can only think within your experience. And that's why we are all different, because we all have different experiences. And mind takes the shape of our impressions. So every time you see something, you see somebody, you're always making a judgment based on your past experience. And we will talk about it more later. And let's talk about some fundamentals of meditation. Two things we need to remember. One is cognitive control, which is skill to maintain awareness in the present moment. This is what we practice when we meditate. We sit down and try to gain control over our mind, our monkey mind that keeps wandering all over the place. And second is to gain wisdom. If you have the capability to control your mind or willpower, but no wisdom, it's very dangerous. Especially today with all the technology that can empower a single person to do a lot of harm if they have the willpower, but not the wisdom. So wisdom and cognitive control goes together like wings of a bird, and wisdom is skill to comprehend the reality of the present moment. So you bring your mind to the present moment, you experience, you need to be able to understand what's the reality of your experience. This will become clearer as we go further. So let's try to understand. This is very important. This part of this next slide, I'll spend a few minutes on that. And those who are not here yet, please bring your mind back. 47% of you probably not here. So please listen. So being in the valley, let me use a computer analogy. So I think you're familiar with a computer. We have inputs, we have some processing, memory in the middle, and some outputs. And our body and mind interaction, or causality of body and mind, is very similar. So we have certain inputs. We have 5 senses, our sensory inputs. That's in mindfulness, there's a 6th one, which is part of the mind, which I will touch later. And then we have outputs, which the thought. Once you have a thought, it's your intention. You already taken the action, initiated the action, and then you either words and deeds. You say something, you do something. So our whole causality of mind and matter is governed by this. We have 5 inputs and 3 outputs. And what is important to understand is what happens in the middle. So in the middle, we talked before about our impressions that are gathered through our life experience. And what happens is we have, I call it intuitive mind. I'm not going to use any brain science or neuroscience or anatomy in this. This is an experiential model, something you can experience yourself, and as I said before, validate yourself. It's important. And there are close parallels with the anatomy of the brain, the primitive brain and the cortical brain and prefrontal cortex and so on, but let's stick to this first. So one is the intuitive mind. The intuitive mind is really evolutionary. We all have, and the animals have it, and it's important to realize that what it does is that when we get a stimulus, we see something or we see somebody, that mind will go compare with your past experiences, whatever you have experienced that's related to that object, and gives you a judgment. You have no control over it. It is totally autonomous. It's subconscious. Because, for example, if our ancestors, they were going in the jungle, they see a tiger or a lion, there's no time to think, oh, this is a lion. Maybe it's not so harmful. Let me think about it. There's no time for that. You have to react immediately, and by evolution we are given this capability to make the judgment, but this means it's very generalized. If you see a tiger, you always either fight or flight response will kick in, and you do either fight or flight. But the important part is that the judgment is made for you, and it's based on your past experience that tiger is dangerous. This means all tigers are dangerous. There's no friendly tiger. That's the judgment that's made based on that experience. And this means that this trait is evolutionary, and we are still living with it. And this is one of the core issues that we have to deal with. So even today, we react the same. So if you find a cockroach in your bedroom, you probably dash out and call 911 or a Terminator. We react instantly. We don't have time to think, or because our fear or that it is ugly is something that we have ingrained during our experience. So when you are a child, or any child, seeing a cockroach, probably try to play with it. They're not afraid of it. So from that childhood until now, if you are afraid of a cockroach, or if you think it's ugly, somewhere in between you have gain that experience or the impression. And that's what makes you really run away or get scared. So this means that this is one of the, I wouldn't say weaknesses, but this is something that is exploited today by marketing, by politicians. They appeal, fake news, they all appeal to this weakness that we have in our intuitive mind, because we are driven by our primitive urges. But by the way, what are the two strongest primitive urges we have? Primitive, I wouldn't call it primitive. Our evolutionary urges we have. We all have it. If not for that, we wouldn't be here. Human race wouldn't be here. It was an essential part of survival. Any guesses? No, I mean it's more specific. Fear. No, this is a desire. I mean, our survival is based on desire. And the two strongest desires are feed and breed. If we don't do that, we won't be here. So if you look at those two, all our cylinders are firing when we are doing that. Our five senses, we can seek pleasure from all five senses when we do that. That's by nature to make us multiply. That's what nature has done to us, and we keep following that. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm just saying it, okay? Oh, sorry. So, which means that if you look at advertising, they know you better than you do yourself. They appeal to you, these weaknesses. And also, as I said before, our intuitive mind makes a very generalized judgment. But today, the advanced technology has surpassed our capability. So the marketeers, instead of having a generalized advertising like on television, now they can advertise targeted specifically to you. They know all your weaknesses, if you like, or your traits. And Amazon, Google, they all know you better than probably you do, and they can target their advertising to you. And probably in the future, this is all because of artificial intelligence, and maybe in the future, we might have an AI chip in our head to compensate for this intuitive mind's behavior. So what can we do? That is why we are advanced beings. We have the advanced brain or the higher brain, which is our cortical system in anatomical terms. So we can intervene when this happens. We can realize, that is why mindfulness is important. With mindfulness practice, you can see this in slow motion. When you see somebody that we are biased. So our biases are, just to backtrack a little bit, like Hollywood movies and news, whatever we see, we're constantly getting this information and we are making judgments. So constantly we are comparing and judging, if you really care to look at your mind. And those impressions, if you watch a movie and say a certain kind of person, I wouldn't describe because for political correctness, well, that's not important these days, I suppose. But if you see a person and say that person is very violent, and maybe it's a race, culture, looks, whatever, and that impression stays with you. And then you see a person like that coming at you, on the road, you will probably cross the road to the other side. Just watching a movie, you get that impression. And if you hear a suicide bomber or a shooting, you have that impression of that person, and then you generalize it. This is our instinctive mind generalizing, like all tigers are dangerous. Similarly, we generalize and then we react based on that. And this is one of the things that as intelligent beings, as human beings, we are able to manage with our higher brain. And all these instinctive reactions we are getting, we can intervene with that higher brain and make a considered response. And as we have evolved, we become social beings, we are doing that. And we follow certain social norms, we have rules and regulations, and we tend to follow that. So that kind of forces us to use that brain and behave as a society, but we still got a lot of elements that not necessarily follow that. So the stereotyping is one of the primitive urges that we should try to control, and for that you need those two skills, cognitive control and wisdom. So first you need to become aware that you are making judgments, and then you say, oh, I shouldn't be judging that person. I have no idea. I talked about before that person coming towards you on the road and you cross, and that person is totally innocent and have no idea. So this is important. So hope you get the idea. This part is the most important part to understand how your mind works. So let's talk about cognitive control. At this point, let's do a small test. Are you ready for that? Okay. Please stand up and just relax yourself. And if you can, it's fine. And when you sit down, please sit towards the front of the chair so that you're not leaning towards the back without resting your back. Please sit down. And we're going to do a short kind of meditation kind of test. And you can keep your hands on your thigh or your knee and relax your shoulders. And gently close your eyes. So what you're supposed to do is observe your breathing. You should 100% be on your breath. Starting from the in-breath, you can feel your air going in. Inhale, end of the inhale, beginning of the exhale to the end of the exhale, then count 1. And the second time, do the same, you count 2. And I'll give you some time, see how far you can count. If the mind wanders, you have to start counting from the beginning again, from 1. So this is the test we are going to do. And you have to be very careful that you realize that your mind has wandered. So go ahead, close your eyes gently and start counting. Okay. How far did you count? If you count to 3, 7, that's good. 5. Normally 3, 4, 5. If you are a regular meditator, maybe 10, 15. So you realize how hard it is to really be here. So that's why 47% of the time our mind is wandering. So now let's look at wisdom. What is wisdom, or how do we gain wisdom? So important one is when you are going to learn something or gain wisdom, you need to always have the right intention, a wholesome intention, which means it doesn't do any harm to you or to anybody else. And then you gather knowledge intelligently. That means that you know what you know and you do not know what you do not know. And the most important in knowing is knowing not knowing. As Steve Jobs said, stay hungry, stay foolish. So like building a puzzle, you got to know the missing pieces. So when you build knowledge, think of what you do not know. I'm mainly talking about mindfulness, but this goes for anything. And then you analyze your knowledge critically. And this is important part, because do not believe anything that you read, hear. And this is a famous saying by Buddha, said, do not believe what I say. He said it himself. Do not believe any other teacher says. Do not believe your elders, what the elders say. You understand it, apply it, and prove it to yourself. And in mindfulness meditation, this is very important, because this is experiential and you can verify. So everything that I'm saying is just knowledge, information. And information, knowledge has two types of knowledge. One is the acquired knowledge or borrowed knowledge. That's what you're doing now. You read papers or you read books. It's all acquired knowledge. And the other knowledge is when you get skills and wisdom, you realize knowledge. You can create your own knowledge. This is like when you are studying, you go through college and you do some research and find new things. So it is very important to acquire knowledge, and then you apply it, and then you build skills. And when you use your skills, you get to a level that you create the wisdom. And wisdom is being able to think beyond most people. You come up with your own ideas. And this is work in progress. This is a lifetime job. So at this point, let's do a small test. I'd like 2 volunteers. Would you like? Yeah, please. Yeah, you can stand on the, because I agree, just to mention that you will be on the video. Is that okay? Okay, you can stand there. So before I do this, I want to ask you a question. How many of you drove here today? Please raise your hand. So if you remember where you parked, keep your hands up. If you remember where you parked, if you don't remember, you can put your hands down. You remember. Okay, everyone. Now, if you are 100% sure that your car is there where you parked, keep your hands up. If you don't, please put your hands down. So most of you are 100% sure that your car is there where you parked. Okay, good. Hold on to that thought. I'll get back to you. Close your eyes. So can you put your hands forward? Hold your hands forward as well. Yeah. So keep your eyes closed completely, okay? Hold on to this. Now, okay, now you can tell me, sorry, what's your name?
Janani.
Janani. And yours?
Angel.
Angel. Janani, tell me what you are holding and what shape it is and what color it is.
I can't tell the color, but I'm assuming it's a banana.
Good. Then how about you?
Square Lego piece. I assume it's red because I've seen it.
Okay. You say it's red. I think you did spoil it, but okay. Thank you. I'll have it back. Yeah. Thank you. You are smart. Yes, you can open your eyes. Okay. Thank you. Please take a seat. Yeah. You did spoil it, but normally, like you were saying, you saw it before it was red, and you would say red. So I think you were very mindful. And so the morals of the demo is that if you said red, which you were going to, that means this is blue. I didn't give the one that was here. You were relying on your memory to be 100% correct in this present moment. So equally, those of you who are 100% sure that your car is where you parked, how do you know unless you have a camera connected looking at it? There is no way of knowing. So you are assuming the past to be true. And this means if you go and your car is stolen, Cupertino probably wouldn't happen, but if it is not there, you will be really emotionally devastated because your expectation was it to be there. If you are a mindful person, you know there is a chance that it is there, but if it is not there, you will still be mindful and take action instead of screaming, shouting, and calling 911. But thank you. So it's important to realize that past is only memory. And at that, as I said before, your mind, everything you experience is a judgment. So all your memory that you have is a kind of judgment. And there are a lot of biases built into that. And then if you rely on your past memory, now when you use it, it's a judgment that you are making. And the future is just imagination. It is not real either. But it is a possibility. I mean, obviously we have to plan our lives, we got to plan for jobs, buying houses, getting married, whatever. And the possibility is there. But you cannot do anything about the possibility just by dreaming about it or thinking about it. The only thing you can do is now. So if I want to go from here to there, and let's say I had my knee surgery and you know, I cannot walk, but I know the possibility of walking there, I want to walk there, I take one step now towards that, and if I take another step in the wrong direction, then I correct it and go in the right direction. But all that is only in this present moment. I cannot be there, I can only be here. So this is very important to realize that anything you want to do, achieve in the future, you only have this moment, this fraction of a second. So that is why it's instead of dreaming, you've got to always think, what can I do now to achieve my goal, whether it's your career or whatever else you want to do. And so the present is really a very narrow slot of time that's passing. And you've got to take advantage of it now, otherwise it's gone forever. So a mindful person really realize this. That's part of the wisdom that you gain. Now I know you hear all this and you know, and your knowledge is there, and you say, okay, yes, I understand. But when you try to apply, when you get emotions, how do you manage without the wisdom? So you really need to know this experientially. And let's look at, we talk about the happiness and unhappiness. And I said at the beginning, our goal, life goal is happiness, but there's a pitfall. And most of our happiness comes from seeking pleasure. We talk about the five senses and our urges that we want to, have ice cream, a lot of ice cream, or whatever you like, chocolate. Everything we do, we have all our five senses, and we seek pleasure, and that pleasure is, we get the pleasure at the time that we satisfy our senses, and that makes us happy. Either before we are expecting to do something, or afterwards thinking about it, you can be happy. So you have pleasure and happiness that's probably last longer. And the pitfall is that if you get carried away with this desire to fulfill your pleasure, there is a slippery slope. So you start with like and some kind of, okay, it's delightful. Before you know, it turns into clinging and greed, and then you are addicted to it. So whether it's drinking, smoking, even eating, or even working, we get addicted to it. And that really leads to self-annihilation. And literally, that is the case. So that dotted line on the screen is a safe zone. Oh. Sorry, you haven't been looking at it. Thank you. So, because I couldn't see the screen. So again, you start with desire, you satisfy your pleasures, and then you want more and more, another ice cream or more food, whatever you do, and you go down the slippery slope into an abyss. And the opposite is also true. If you are not able to satisfy your desire, somebody takes them, if you're a child, you take away the ice cream, you either be sad or mad. When you are sad, you really internalize that frustration, or when you are angry, you try to take it on somebody else. So both these cases, and this can apply to your beliefs as well, and you become really obsessed by it. And that leads to, real anger, fury, and again, self-demise. These are two sides of the same coin. It's important to remember they are both based on desire, wanting something. So how do we manage that? How do we stay on the other side of that line as a mindful person? And if you think about all these emotions, they're all self-centered, very selfish, because we want the desire. I want to be happy. I want to satisfy my senses. And to do that, you got to practice selflessness. You practice mindfulness and mindfulness meditation. It's part of that. And compassion. And that way you cultivate selflessness. And when you do selfless acts, when you are doing the act, you get the joy. And thinking about it or planning for it, you can have the feeling of bliss. And mindfulness give you the bliss. So I'm defining pleasure, happiness, joy, and bliss. If you Google, if you look for dictionaries, these are used interchangeably. So I'm defining under mindfulness, separating the meaning. One is based on desire, one is based on selflessness. So this is important to understand. And so, consequences of stress. Let's talk about that. When do you think this publication came out? It's not on the printout. I didn't put it on there. So if you're looking at the handout, it's not there. I put that already. Okay, sorry. Yes, 1983. So you might be wondering, what was going on in 1983? There was no internet, there was no Facebook, there were no mobile phones, there was no texting. What did they get stressed about compared to now? I know most of us, including myself, we were there at the time. So they thought it was an epidemic at the time, and that's why this publication. And there was some interest in mindfulness, but it wasn't really taken up seriously. So since then, we've gone global, and today it is an epidemic, global epidemic, because of the global community, if you look at it that way. So let's look at the future. So future is not any better. There are 51 billion connected devices or things, connected things, and this is going to grow. So I think probably the reason is the technology is growing faster than the humans can adapt. We do not know how to manage ourselves to use this. The technology is for the benefit of mankind, comfort and convenience, but if we do not know how to use it, we really get stressed. And it is a global problem, and this is really affecting the young more than the older generation. And in statistically 2011 to 2018, the suicide attempts by kids who are 10 to 12 years old has gone up by 338%. And if you know about the schools, the suicide attempt rates have been increasing. So this is a problem that needs addressing. We cannot blame the companies. I'm sure there are engineers here maybe who are contributing to this trend, but they are not responsible. They are only trying to help mankind, making our lives easier. And it is our responsibility to be able to manage our urges and not be, probably going to bed looking at all your answering your emails and getting stressed and so on. So what is the impact of that? You're probably heard of or familiar with autonomous nervous system, and it has two parts, sympathetic and parasympathetic. The sympathetic nervous system kicks in when you are stressed, which is really the fight and flight response, which, as I mentioned earlier, this is for ancestors to really run away quickly from a tiger or a lion or whatever is the threat. And today, we trigger exactly the same response when somebody is going slow in the front lane, in the lane when you're driving, or somebody cut in front of you, or maybe you didn't get enough likes on your Facebook, or you didn't get an email, or you didn't get a text, or you got one or didn't get one. All these instances, we trigger this stress hormone, which is adrenal gland. And what happens when it triggers, your body prepares for this fight or flight response. It shuts down non-essential functions like digestion and sex drive, and then gives more energy to your heart and lungs, so you're prepared to fight or flight. And so if you're at work and if your mouth is dry, and you may be drinking water all the time, and you be eating because it's the time to eat, you are not hungry, that means you are in a stressful life because your digestive system is shutting down every time you get stressed. And if you activate your parasympathetic, then you will have rest and digest. This is really important for physical health and mental health as well. It affects your mind, body, emotions, and behavior. The details are on the printout, so I'm not going to read through, insomnia and relationships are affected, and a lot of other negative things that you have to live with. So, consequences of unhealthy lifestyle. If you don't have cognitive control and you cannot manage your urges, your instinctive urges especially, your life is not managed in a healthy way. According to statistics from CDC, stress is the number one proxy killer. Proxy killer meaning it leads to diseases that really kills you. And they also say that 60% of all illnesses and diseases are stemming from bad lifestyle stress. And 80% of heart disease and stroke, 80% of type 2 diabetes, 40% of cancer, they are all preventable. So I think you can probably relate to this. And the bad part is it's not just you. It's also your family. If you are stressed and if you come home stressed from work, you pass it to your family as well, or friends, wherever you interact. So you've got to be really thinking it's like smoking. It affects people around you. And we have to really take ownership of that. If you are stressed, at least learn to try to manage. So we suffer from this. And one of the sayings from Buddha is that pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. What does that mean? So rejection of pain is what causes suffering. I mentioned earlier pain management. MBCT is mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, which is covered by health insurance. I think my wife has back problems and she is on one of these courses with Kaiser. It is covered by insurance and it's a long, many weeks of it. But basically what they teach is how to manage. If you got a chronic pain, you cannot do much about it. So you got to manage what you can and learn to manage what you cannot. This is part of the wisdom you gain through mindfulness practice. When you come to these classes that was mentioned, so I'll be doing that, how to observe your own sensations and objectively look at them and experience what reality is and how to accept whatever you experience. So this is more than experience, because it's now scientifically shown that if you inflict pain on somebody at rest, that yellow part on there, this is a brain scan. It is showing a high amount of pain being experienced. But if you inflict pain on a meditator, he just feel a little, but almost nothing. So this is what I was talking about at the beginning, that if you are in a state of meditation, you don't feel pain. So I think you've said a lot, you got a lot of knowledge. I'm sure you are all analytical minded, maybe technically minded, you want to analyze this. But I want to give some guidelines, because mindfulness and meditation have close parallels but also distinct differences. Science is all about harnessing the causality of matter. Matter includes space and time in this context. And meditation is all about harnessing mind and matter. Now I need to explain that mind in science, or consciousness, is not still clearly defined, or where it is in the brain or what it is. So in mindfulness sense, when I use mind, you all experience consciousness. This is experiential model. If any of you don't experience consciousness, maybe we need to call 911. So you experience consciousness, so you know you have consciousness, and you know you have a body. And secondly, it's important to verify. So in science, it's important that third parties can verify whatever the scientists discover or claim to know. Equally, in meditation, you can verify, except, I talk about you don't feel the pain when you are in meditation. You can practice yourself and verify it yourself. So there is a verification process, except it is your experience. In science, your experience is not counted. You can't write papers about it, or anybody will accept it. So that is a big difference between science and mindfulness. Also in science, reality is out there, all the matter out there, even in the cosmos. But in mindfulness, reality, as I mentioned earlier, it is your experience at this moment. That's the only reality. If it's in the past, it's just memory. If it's in the future, it's just imagination. And only reality is now. It's like saying, a tree falls, it is Zen saying, tree falls in the jungle. Does it make a sound? If you don't hear it, there is no sound in this context. So whatever you experience is your own, and each individual has their own experience. I've been saying a lot of negative things about how bad stress is and what can happen to you, all the diseases. Let's look at some positive news. These are validated by American Psychology Association as well as other reputable research organizations. So I don't want to go through the whole list. I pick up two things here that are important or interesting for all of us. One is slow down aging. Your DNA, telomeres at the end of DNA, this is scientifically proven, they get shorter as you get older. So meditator, this shortening is much slower. In other words, you age slower. So you will look young and feel young. It's never too late to start, whatever your age is, but you will have this positive effect. And the last one, live happily and pass away. I didn't want to use the word D because we are in kind of denial. It is important that, as I said in the previous, that if we reject something, there is more suffering. We need to learn, or you manage what you can, to learn with what we cannot manage, what we have no control over. So, especially as we get older, we really need to be mindful. How do we get old, and how do we manage old age, instead of rejecting, oh, I can't do that, I can't do this. And if you have that negative thinking, your suffering will be much higher. So you got an option to be either mindful, let your intuitive or primitive mind dictates your urges and your reactions, or you can be mindful and calm. In this case, the host is also mindful. Luckily, he doesn't have much of the cortex, the higher brain. So what is the technology for this inner engineering? It is mindfulness. So this definition comes from John Kabat-Zinn from UMass. He coined the word MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction, and most of the mindfulness techniques used in healthcare. And he defines this as paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally. The key word here is non-judgmentally. This is something we will practice when we practice meditation, how to observe all your experiences, sensations, without judging. This is something you need to practice to gain. It's easy to say, but it's hard to practice. And the other thing is, how do we calm our mind? Our mind is naturally calm if we don't disturb it. It's like water. If you don't do anything, well, I'm a bit shaky. If you don't do anything, it'll be transparent, reflective, and very calm. But what we are doing is, if you shake it, it gets disturbed. Mind is exactly like that. We are agitating our mind every time we get sensory inputs, constantly. We are constantly perceiving. And this causes the agitation. So we are not putting just pebbles in the pond, we are also putting boulders in there in our life. So it's constantly being agitated. And that is where mindfulness helps let the mind calm. So basically, mindfulness is learning to do nothing. So just a question. What is the most easiest thing to do physically? Do nothing. What is the most difficult thing to do mentally? Do nothing. So what you need to do is to do nothing. So in other words, you should be able to in control of your senses. So when you go into deep meditation, you will experience that. I cannot kind of explain it until you experience it. Then your mind will be calm. So basically, it's learning to do nothing. How can it be hard? So with that, so there are many different types of meditations, and in the classes that I do, I mainly do three things: the breath meditation and body sensation scanning, which is very helpful if you are having hard time going to sleep, and also loving kindness meditation. So in breath meditation, basically like you did before, you focus on the breath, and as you experience, it'll run away, after 3 breaths, 2 breaths, 4 breaths. You don't react, you don't judge, you just become aware that your mind has wandered, and then bring it back, and then continue. So meditation is all about bringing the mind, at the beginning, bringing the mind back and trying to stay focused on the breathing. Would you like to try that? Yes? Okay. So again, I think you've been sitting for a while. Please stand again, those who can. And again, relax yourself, relax calm, and then sit like before, sit forward without leaning against the back. So it is important not to lean, because when you lean your back, it sends a message to your brain you are relaxed to go into sleep. So you might feel drowsy. And it's important that your nervous system functions most efficiently when you are straight. So we do exactly the same as before. You don't need to count. And this time I'll be guiding. So in practice in the classes also, I'm doing guided meditation. It is like trainer wheels for the bike. So until you learn to get the balance, the guiding meditation helps you, prompt you what to do and bring your mind back as well. So let's start with just relax. Close your eyes gently. Let your shoulders drop. You can rest your hands on your thighs or your knees. Relax your jaws, especially because we store a lot of stress in your jaw. Let it drop. Relax your facial muscles. Now feel your feet, your weight on the shoes. Feel the sensation of the weight on your heels or your sole. And now feel your weight resting on the chair. Focus on the sensation. Feel what it is like. The sensation of pressure on your sit bones. Just stay with that sensation. And now become aware of your breathing at the lower abdomen. You should be able to feel the lower abdomen rising and falling. If you don't feel it, you can touch, you keep your hand and feel it. Feel your abdomen rising when you inhale and falling when you exhale. And you can feel the chest as well, rising, expanding, and contracting. And you can now focus on the breath at the nostrils, like before, and try to stay with the breath from the beginning of the inhale to the end of the inhale, and the beginning of the exhale to the end of the exhale. One breath at a time. Try to keep your mind on the breath. If your mind wanders, just gently bring it back and continue. Try to feel the sensation of breathing at the tip of the nostrils. And you have to stay at the tip of the nostril without going into the body with the breath or out of the body with the breath. Like a gatekeeper watching people going in and out at a gate. Just observe the breath entering and leaving. The sensation of that at the nostrils. So open your eyes. In the interest of time, I cut it short because we need to have some time for questions. So before we go to questions, I'd like to show you a short video.
You may have heard this word mindfulness. It's become something of a buzz phrase of late. I'm going to give you one simple, serviceable definition, which is this. Mindfulness is the ability to know what's happening in your head at any given moment without getting carried away by it. Imagine how useful this could be. Just as an example, you're driving down the road and somebody cuts you off in traffic. How do you normally react? I think most of us, we normally react by having a thought, which is, I'm pissed. And then what happens next? You immediately, habitually, reflexively inhabit that thought. You actually become pissed. There's no buffer between the stimulus and your reaction. With just a little bit of mindfulness, in that same situation, you might notice my chest is buzzing, my ears are turning red, I'm having a starburst of self-righteous thoughts, I'm getting angry. But you don't necessarily have to act on it and chase that person down the road, screaming at them with your kids in the back of the car thinking you've gone nuts. Now, you might be thinking, don't I need to get angry sometimes? Aren't I justified? I would say yes, but probably not as much as you think. The proposition here is not that you should be rendered by mindfulness into some lifeless, non-judgmental blob. The proposition is that you should learn how to respond wisely to things that happen to you, rather than just reacting blindly. And that, my friends, is a superpower. How do you get it? The way to get it is through meditation. I believe that meditation and mindfulness are the next big public health revolution. In the 1940s, if you told somebody you were going running, they would have said, who's chasing you? But then what happened next? The scientists swooped in, they showed that physical exercise is really good for you, and now all of us do it, and if we don't, we feel guilty about it. And that's where I think we're headed with mindfulness and meditation. It's going to join the pantheon of no-brainers like brushing your teeth, eating well, and taking the meds your doctor prescribed for you. Let me just close by saying, mindfulness is not going to solve all of your problems. It's not going to render your life a nonstop parade of unicorns and rainbows. Nonetheless, this is a superpower, and one that is accessible by you immediately.
Thank you. So, time for questions. Unless you have written down cards, I can get them, or feel free to come to the mic and ask questions. We covered a lot of ground, so I'm sure you have questions too.
Hi. You mentioned a sixth sense, which is apart from the five senses that we know. What was that sixth sense?
Okay, good question. I didn't cover that. So, sixth sense is a part of the mind that has all the experiences from the past that keeps throwing at us to bring it to our consciousness. And this is primarily causing the wandering mind. So even though we have no sensory input, that's what you probably experience during practicing meditation. Thoughts keep coming at you. So that is in mindfulness considered another sense organ, because it keeps bringing things into your consciousness.
You mentioned one of the slides, paying attention purposely, not being judgmental. Can you define what judgmental means in terms of meditation, not being judgmental?
Judgmental meaning let's say you experience a sensation. I mean, during meditation, this is what you do. You experience a sensation. Normally we would call it pain.
Okay.
You don't call it pain. You call it a sensation.
Okay.
It could be pleasant, it could be unpleasant. Either way, it's a sensation. So you learn to look at all your body sensations, especially pain that you will get during meditation, because the moment you call it pain, you already judge it, you reject it. Okay. If you don't call it pain, you learn to look at it for what it is, which is a sensation, then you will not be judging.
Does the same apply to thoughts also?
It's a thought, yes. Okay. It's all thought. Okay. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah, please. Speak to the mic, yeah. Because they are recording it,
so happiness is that is getting what you desire. But isn't desire is the one that leads you to unhappiness?
Well, that was that two curves that I had.
Yeah.
So desire, if you satisfy your desire, you are happy. If you don't satisfy your desire, you become unhappy.
So my desire is that I want to become the CEO of some major organization, suppose say Google.
Uh-huh.
So if I don't satisfy that, then I'm not happy, right?
Correct.
So,
if that is your desire,
so then that leads to me unhappiness.
correct.
So then when will I get happiness? That's the only desire in my life.
No, when you become the CEO, you are happy.
I maybe the chances are very less, right? How can I become happy then? How do I become happy
Well,
then?
if
I don't become the CEO.
If your expectations are unrealistic, you will always be unhappy.
So getting what you desire is happiness, or getting what you need is happiness?
Both.
Like
I mean,
food
desire,
is-
that is, I think your question is good. So if you set your desire to be realistic, then you can be happier. If it becomes unrealistic, your chances of becoming happy are much less. For example, if you can't afford a gourmet meal, if you desire a gourmet meal, you will always be unhappy. But if you are happy with, hamburger, then you are happy with that because you got the food. So it's your expectation that determines where you are on this scale.
So getting a meal is something, I think so it's a need, right? So your needs are met, you're happy. If you have desires, these are very broad, like, those are beyond expectations, the desires might be. Need is food, clothing, shelter, they are the basic needs of human being. And that's what we aspire for, and we get that, we'll be happy. If we don't get food, if we don't get, a house to stay in, if we don't get, clothing, that is the basic things that is the one that we should have in our mind, right? And that makes us happy.
Then you are a very mindful person.
So, so the rest, if we desire for more, desire is something, I think so that leads to unhappiness. Need is something that has to be met.
Well,
that is the basic
that has
thing.
to be met, but even your need may not be met.
Yeah.
You need clothing, but if you don't get clothing, you can't
Basic
afford it, you don't get it,
necessities.
you will be unhappy.
Yeah.
So whether it's a need or desire, need is also a desire.
I think the needs are simple. Desires might be not
Okay.
that simple.
Yes, thank you. Please speak to the mic.
Yeah. This is related to your slide on what the future holds and regarding the explosion of growth on internet and stuff like that. And you mentioned it's our responsibility.
Correct.
As an individual responsibility.
Our responsibility to use these devices or technologies wisely, the way we need it.
Yeah.
Wisely
and
meaning.
you also mentioned the corporations have good intentions only, right? So the responsibility is us. So
Yes.
the follow-up question is, we have R-rated movies restricted for certain kids. We also restrict driving for kids. We restrict smoking, drinking, marriage, a lot of things for kids.
Right.
Okay, even though you can be happy when you do those. The responsibility is not us, it's collectively.
It's not us.
It's not individual responsibility. The question that I'm trying to say is there something that we can do more than putting it on personal responsibility? Should we do something legislatively to restrict explosive distractions imposed on us?
Correct. We
are restricting, I want to repeat that, R-rated movies,
Yes.
driving,
Correct.
okay, we don't let them. It's
Correct.
only a mechanical device.
Yes.
How do we let the kids drive their brain
Yes.
irresponsibly
Right.
and tell them do whatever you want
Right.
to make you happy?
Right. No, I totally agree with you. So there should be certain regulations and other control factors going in there. But I'm assuming they're all there, and we should, like in what is happening today with Facebook and so on, preventing live streaming or fake news. I mean, those things, yes, by regulation maybe we should control. But what I'm talking about is overindulgence in these devices. That's where we need to our responsibility. There's another question. How do blood pressure meds amplify stress due to cyclical medical not sure what is off during day. Medical med wearing, is that the question? So if any medication increases your stress, I'm not sure what you mean by stress there. Stress comes if you are rejecting something or something that you do not like. So if you take medication, you get physically tired or physically stressed. I mean, that's a symptom of the side effect of medication. And mindfulness can help you manage that. If you meditate, your body will be calmer, and if you have any pain or other uncomfortable feelings, you can manage that. So there are certain things, as I said before, things you can manage with meditation. Certain things you cannot, you just accept. So certainly managing this kind of discomfort, mindfulness will help. Thank you.
I have a question. Like most of the times you feel sleepy when you try to do meditation.
Mm-hmm.
How do you avoid that?
That's a common problem. That is the lack of cognitive control. I mean, because you are not in control of your own mind. So one thing is, if you are sitting for meditation, you got to find the time that you do not, you are not have a full belly, or in the evening or before going to bed. The best time is early morning when you wake up. You are totally alert. And if you're feeling sleepy at that point, that means you should probably sleep. And the most important is, even you feel sleepy, one thing you can do if you really meditate, hold your breath for 10 seconds, stop breathing for 10 seconds, you will wake up. And then you can continue. So with practice, when you feel the benefits of meditation, you will not be sleepy. Yeah.
Another follow-up question is like,
probably
can you do shavasana and do meditation in the shavasana pose, corpse pose?
You can, if that really I mean, when I do yoga, I fall asleep in savasana. So it's not really a meditative. I mean, the body scanning I do in the class is something you do when you are sleeping, lying down in bed. But that's a different purpose. It relaxes you, go into a deeper sleep. One more question, last one? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, it was a good talk. Just one question that I've kind of noticed from others while discussing about meditation is, some people say that meditation is not for me, or that is it defined by the personality type? Like, for example, my husband is like extremely active, and he tells me that I cannot sit down and meditate, or he can do something like gardening, which is kind of maybe therapeutic, but he says I cannot sit down and meditate. So I would like your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Yeah, if you think you don't need meditation, you probably are the ones who need meditation. General comment. Okay. But I mean, there are many different ways to meditate. I mean, like there are religious things, counting beads or imagining some images and all kinds of things. So mindfulness meditation is really what is proven to be the most effective in handling most of our stress, because it leads to this non-judgmental and so on, which is not practiced in some other kinds of meditation. But a lot of people think they cannot meditate, they are too busy. They really need the meditation. So until you practice, it's hard to convince that they see the benefit. So only way is to somehow convince them to practice, and then they see the benefit, then they'll continue. So maybe if he's not here today. So I mean, there's no simple answer. Yeah, I mean, when you sit for meditation, not everybody goes into a deep meditation. It depends on your background, your physical conditions, a lot of other things. So there may be some people find it harder than others. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sunil. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for attending. Please be sure to see us at our back table on your way out for information about Sunil's upcoming workshops. And you can see all of our events listings as well on our website, sccl.org. Thank you, and have a wonderful rest of your afternoon.